Hello everyone, welcome to another video tutorial of Keen. In this video, we will talk about how we can set up your very first project. So in this video, we will show the best practices to use within Keen for any projects regardless of size. We will create a very basic dynamic web app that uses Keen, and we will also use PHP and Apache on a localhost environment as a sample environment. However, you are not limited to use PHP and Apache. You can use any framework or any language that you choose. Before we start, we need to make sure that you have purchased and downloaded Keen. And also, we highly recommend that you check out our very first video, installation and getting started with Keen. You can find it on YouTube, and we will link the video in the description below. Also, please subscribe to us and turn on the notification bell to get the latest update whenever we release a new tutorial video. Now, this video tutorial will be applicable with all versions of Keen, from version 1 to version 1.3.5, which is this current version. However, in the same concept will be also applicable for future versions of Keen. It may differ a little bit, but the overall flow should remain the same. So let's go ahead and create our very first project. So what I've done here is I've created a folder called Keen App. We will call this our project folder. And Keen App, our project folder, is created within my localhost environment. So we will need to go ahead and create 3 folders. The first folder would be called the assets, and the second will be pages. This is where, the assets is where all the Keen's CSS and JS and all the necessary dependent files, third-party files, will be compiled into. More on that later on how we can do that. Pages is where all your pages goes in. Your any kind of project page that is not your index. And then we need one more folder called partials. And partials is mainly for files, HTML blocks of files, or that builds Keen, basically. Okay, so now that we have our main project file or project folder set up, let's go ahead and look at our source folder. The Keen source folder will be the package file that you've downloaded after purchasing Keen. Go ahead and just extract it, and you come across with a folder like this. The first thing you should do is you need to, again, similar with our first video, check out the docs folder and load up index.html. And then what we can do here is we will go and look into our default demo. Default demo will be our base sample. However, you are free to choose any other demos that comes packaged with Keen. So let's go ahead and look at our default demo. So to kickstart your project, we highly recommend that you use Keen's layout builder instead of manually copy and pasting segments of code into your project. This is because the layout builder helps you generate the entire layout automatically and rapidly. Therefore, you do not need to do all the heavy lifting of building your theme or your admin theme layout. So once you've unzipped it, unpacked it, and loaded up the default demo, you can locate the layout builder on this little icon here. This tab here will sit and exist in all our demos, so it is very easily accessible. So let's go ahead and click this. The theme or the look and feel of the current demos you are looking at. For example, let's change the header skin to navy, the logo bar skin to brand, and the aside to light. And then what we can do is we can preview it. And the preview is done. So as you can see, the colors changed, and we can go ahead and check out some of our pages. Like, let's look at our typography, and as you can see, the entire layout configuration has been changed based on our settings in the layout builder. Let's go back to our layout builder, and let's say this is how we want our project to look like moving forward. So let's go ahead and export it. So let's make sure we're not robots and submit. Okay, so once it's done exporting it, what we can do is let's save it into our project folder. So let's go back to my localhost folder, go to the project folder, and just paste it here for now. And let's check our project folder. And now let's go ahead and unzip this right here in our project. So once you've extracted the layout builder or the layout, you'll notice that there'll be two files that appeared in your folder, in the index and the layout. The index is basically the master template where all template parts are included, and the layout is basically the sort of like the layout controller for all the little HTML, for all the little partials that goes into your project. And then if we look into the partials folder, you'll notice now the partials folder will have a couple of files in it, and each file is basically a little section within your project or within the layout. Since we are going to be using PHP as our sample language, so what we need to do now is to rename all of these HTML files to .php so that we can manipulate it. We can manipulate it easier, and we can manipulate it more dynamically using PHP. So let's go back to our root of our project folder. We don't need the layout anymore, so let's just delete that and rename this to PHP. And we need to do the same thing for everything else. Okay, now that all our partials are done, what we need to do next is to create our blank pages. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, now that our pages are done, for this sample or for this tutorial, we're just going to create 2 pages. We can of course create more, however much you want, but basically the idea or the approach of dynamically building your pages will be similar. You can grow to as many as you want. So now let's open up index.php with our IDE. Okay, This is index.php, and if you notice, there are quite a number of commented what do you call lines of code where we clearly explain to you what each code means or what each code is meant to do. And also, if you notice, there are some lines of code, commented lines of code, where we mention that you need to include a certain file. Like, for example, this line here specifically says that we should include the layout.html, which is now called layout.php. So what we need to do is, since it's already a PHP file, let's go ahead and include it. Okay, save that. So let's look at our next file, our layout.php. So as I mentioned earlier, this is sort of like the main controller for your layout, where you need to include the header base mobile, the aside base, which is your side menu, your sidebar menu, your base header, your subheader, content, footer, and any floating elements within the layout. And before we include all these files, let's go ahead and see what exactly is it including. So what is including is the first one be partials header base. So if you look at our file, our folder structure, our project folder structure, the partial folder has been populated with the layout elements. So let's look at header base mobile. It just adds the toggler and whatnot into the header for mobile optimization. And next will be our aside base, which is this, and it includes our brand, menu, and footer, which is also right here. Your brand, footer, and menu. So this is where the entire menu sits. So we'll be definitely editing this file or to switch it up, because we don't need the entire key menu. We just need 2 pages. So we will edit this soon, shortly. The next up will be our subheaders and headers, which will be here, and subheaders will be here. And the next important one will be the content base, which will be this one right here. Now in this content base is where you place all the all your content HTML elements. You can of course use your own customized elements or your own customized UI or functions or modules or classes. However, you can also just copy and paste sections of code from Keen's source file, or Keen source folders, and we will demonstrate to you how to do that exactly shortly within this video. So for now, let's go ahead and include all the partial files into the layout, and also let's include the PHP files or the any files that is required within each of the partials as well. Okay, we have done including all necessary files. So, well, we can go ahead and try loading this up. We can do that by just going to our local host and loading a Keen app. So this is basically running. So if you watched our introduction video, our first video, you notice that you're seeing the same thing where the files or the CSS or the stylings are not compiled yet. So we will need to go ahead and compile Keen. So to do so, let's go to Keen's source folder and go back to our tools folder, which is under theme default tools. And in here, we will need to look at our build config file, which is the default JSON. However, before we do that, if you watch the first tutorial video, you notice that there are some files missing or even some folders missing. The folders missing will be the Node modules folder. That's because this is a fresh install. So please go ahead and run your npm, run your yarn to install all dependencies. So let's go ahead and do that quickly. Okay, now that we have installed all our dependencies, so let's look at our build config file, which is the default.json. Click that. And as you can see here, there are quite a number of parameters that comes packed in it, and we will go through in it in more detail in like later videos or upcoming videos. But for now, what we need to really focus here is actually the main config section of this build config file. What it does here is it controls what needs to be compiled and where it needs to go once it's compiled, and what it needs to be included and what's not to be included within your project. So what we can do here is quite a number of things actually. Like we can configure two different types of instances. We could, for example, compile a preview version of Keen to test any global customizations that your project needs before you add it into your project. So once you've tested it, you like what your global customizations that you've done, then you can then include it into your project at a later time. This is the config file that you will be using mostly. However, for this tutorial, we are just going to compile all of Keen's default demos assets into the new project assets or new project folder assets. So to do that is we need to take note of two main parameters. The first one will be the demo parameter, and the second one will be the dist parameter. The demo is to indicate which demo you wish to compile or build rather. So if you leave it blank as what the default is, what Keen does is Keen will run the gup command and then compile all demos into the assets folder of your choice. When I say compile into the assets folder of your choice, that's where the dist parameter comes in. At the moment, it's set to be compiled into the Keen source assets folder. We could always change this to your project assets folder. So in this tutorial, what we're doing is we are using to reiterate, we are using the default demo, and we have a project folder that also has an assets folder within it. So what we need to do is we need to enter default, because we are only compiling, or we only need to compile the default demo assets. If you're using a different layout, for example, if you're using demo 2's layout or demo 3's layout, what you can do here is you can just change this to demo 2 or 3 and so on and so forth, and then compile it. But for this tutorial, we're using default. And in our dist, we'll need to change it to our project folder's assets folder. So let's go ahead to our project folder and click on assets. And what we need to do here is we need to take the path so that it gets compiled into this folder. You can go ahead and click on the bar at the top, copy that, put it here into the dist parameter, and then what we need to do is flip the slashes around and save it. So now, how we explained in the introduction, you need to open your command prompt or your terminal on Macs and run gulp to initiate the compiling sequence. So let's go ahead and do that. To open the command prompt on Windows, you need to go to into the Keen source folder, go to your theme, default tools, and then click on the Explorer. I don't know, what is this, address bar, and then type in cmd to open the command prompt of this folder, and then type in gulp to run the compiler. So as it's running, if you look into our assets folder of our project, which is KeenThemes here, you notice that they are now assets. So let's look at our project, localhost/KeenThemes, and refresh it. And you notice that the layout is working. However, our content seems to be broken. That's mainly because in our layout.php we may be including files with the wrong path name. So let's go ahead and check our layouts out. Okay, so now that we've fixed all our pathing, it now works. However, our content page, or rather our index page, is now blank. So I suppose the next thing to do will be to populate our index page. To do that, let's look at Keen's source folder. Go to theme, default, dist, and the default demo, because that's the demo we are using this tutorial on, basing this tutorial on, and look at index.html. Open it in our IDE. You can go ahead and close all this. Okay, and what we need to do is we need to grab the content. So to preview how the content looks like, what we can do is we can just look at the demo and go to our index page. This is how it looks like. So we are just grabbing all these elements here into our project. So what we do here is we go to our source index, our basically Keen source folder, locate the default demo, and then go to the index file, and then search for k-contents. So this is where all the contents for the index page. So let's minimize that and copy it. We go into our projects index page and then drill down to where the content is going to be, which is, if you drill down, it needs to be within the layout, and then drill down further, you see that it's supposed to be within the content dash base, which is right here. So if we were to paste it here, right below it, and then minimize it, and let's go ahead and clean it up a little bit. Okay, you'll notice that they're actually the same, because basically the layout builder will export a blank content wrapper, which is this element right here. And what you do is you basically add all your content within here. So what we can do now is, because we have our content already generated using the Keen source demo, we can go ahead and delete this, save our base, close the index because we don't need that anymore, go to our project index, and then refresh, and now we have a working index page. So the next step would now be to modify or customize the menu, because we do not need all this Keen's menu links. It's just way too many for a real world project. So let's customize that. As we mentioned earlier, it's within the aside menu, and this is where the menu happens. So what we need to do is we need to change all this, like for example, we can change this to Keen app as our project name, and then we can change this to page 1 and page 2, and we do not need the rest. We'll delete that. And also we do not need everything else below it. So let's go ahead and just minimize all this so that it makes it easier to delete. Okay, highlight all of them, do this, delete, save, go to your project preview and reload, and there you go. We now have two menus, however linking to the wrong page. So let's fix that. So if you can see in the ahref, this page 1 is going to index, and page 2 is going to dashboards brand aside. So we don't want that, obviously. So let's change index to page 1. Sorry, just press 1, and page will be 2 to make it easy. So since this is a simple dynamic PHP based framework or project, we can also dynamically add or remove this active CSS class by doing a simple if-else statement. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, now that our script is done, let's go ahead and test that. Refresh. Go to page 1 and page 2, and our active menu is working. But our pagination is not. So let's look at our controlling, our page controller, or our main layout controller, which is our layout file. So if you look here, it's always going to call the content base.php, which is our index. Okay, so we don't want that. We want this to change when page 1 is clicked or page 2 is clicked. So let's go ahead and edit this to okay, our page control is done. Let's check it out. Refresh our project page, click page 1, 2. It seems to be working, but we can't really be sure. So let's go ahead and add some content in it. Page 1, save. Page 2, save. And then let's go to page 1, and page 1, page 2. So our pages are working, but now we need to add real content. So let's put in, let's say, maybe we can add the profile, the user profile. Okay, we'll add all this into our page 1. And how we do that is we first have to take note of the path of where this source is, or this template is sitting. It's in custom user profile. So let's look at Keen's source. We go under our, let's go back to our root. We go to our theme, default, because it's a demo default right here. We go to our dist and default, and we go to custom user and profile v1. Open that in our IDE, and similar with our index, let's search for k-content. Once we found it, minimize the entire k-content, copy it, and put it in our page 1. Let's clean it up a bit, save, and let's go ahead and test our page 1 again. This is our page 1, refresh, and it partially works. This is because on custom pages or on certain elements within Keen, there are custom CSS and JS files that needs to be included. That this is according to, it's page by page. What we need to do now is we need to include the missing JS file or CSS file. So to do that, we look at our source, which is this one, which is Keen's profile v1 source. We look at our CSS and we try to locate if it's using any special CSS, and yes, it does, because you can see it right here. It's including a profile v1.css. We'd like to mention that all our custom pages will include some sort of custom CSS or JS. When we say custom pages, means pages under the custom tab. So our blog, pricing, invoices, FAQs, and whatnot, they all will have either custom CSS or custom JS or both. So please bear that in mind. So, but now let's just copy this. Let's copy everything, including the commenting, just to make it clean. Go to our index.php in our project and paste it maybe after globals. And of course, let's fix our path. Right, and let's check whether profile has any custom JS. Scroll all the way to the bottom, and let's see. Yes, it does. It does have a profile.js. Let's copy that. And put it in our PHP, our project of PHP. Put it under page scripts and fix the path. Save that. Let's go back to our project and refresh. As you can see, it's working. It's still partially working, just that the image is now missing. So let's have a look at where the image is. Open the contents up in our page 1. Let's look. There we go. This is our image, and as you can notice, the path is wrong here as well. So let's go ahead and fix that. Save it. Refresh. And now it's working. So whenever you include any of Keen's source codes or source templates, please bear in mind of the paths for images, the paths for CSS, and also the paths for the JS that is required for custom pages. Okay, so for now, for page 2, maybe what we can do is let's include a data table. Maybe we include a basic table. Yep. Now, you know what? A basic table is too basic. Let's look at Keen's data table, and yep, let's look at a HTML table instead. Yep, this looks a lot better. And let's include this. So to look at it, we go to components, Keen data table base. So let's look at Keen's source files, our source folder. We go back to our default XAML. We look at components, Keen data table base, HTML table, open it with our IDE. Okay, we can close profile v1, we don't need that anymore. Similar with what we did, locate k-content, font it, minimize it, copy the entire thing, and put it in page 2. And clean it up a bit. Okay, so now, because it's a Keen data table, we're pretty sure there's going to be some additional JS files to be included, but let's just go ahead and test it out on our project. Refresh page 2, and as you can see, it's working, but the data is missing. So similar with the page 1, we go back to Keen's source file and look into the top to see if there's any CSS that needs to be included. And nope, go all the way down to our JS, and yep, right here we need to include the HTML table JS file to initialize it. So let's copy that, put it in our index, paste it here, and fix our path. Okay, so now before we view our project, just a tip: if you are working with a lot of additional custom like JS files that needs to be included, you can actually clean this up to only include the specific files that the page needs. For example, only page 1 needs this and only page 2 needs this. So you can do a simple PHP if else statement to include one or the other script as and when the page is loaded. However, since this tutorial project is very small, we don't have to do that. So let's go ahead and refresh our page 2. Oh, sorry, we didn't save it. Remember, we should always save our files. Refresh, and now our data table is working with all functionality. So there you go. This is how easy it is for you to create a blank project from scratch and then use Keen's layout builder to kickstart your project's layout and then start populating the content using Keen as a companion by browsing Keen's elements using the demos and then locating the code segments or the content segments, copying them, putting into your project, and then checking if the page requires any additional CSS or JS, and also including them into your project, compiling, and finally running it. As you can see, this project is now ready to be deployed, and it probably took us less than half an hour or less than an hour. Let's give it an hour just to be safe. Okay, so now that that's done, this will be the end of this tutorial. In the next tutorial, we will discuss more on the build config file, which is the default.json that we saw earlier, and we will go through on how you can create, or rather customize, Keen globally. And when we say globally, means you can customize the fonts, the colors, or maybe other things, like certain typographies or even buttons or anything like that globally. And then once you've customized it globally, you can then preview it using Keen's preview. Check it if it's good to go. If it's good, what you can do is after that is then switch from compiling to the preview folders, the preview assets, and then switch the destination in the build tools or the build config file, and then have it compiled into your project. So that's going to be a really fun tutorial to make and for us to share with you guys. So please subscribe to us and turn on the notification bell so that the next time when we release a new tutorial, you will get an immediate update. Also follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and all those fun stuff. All the links will be in the description. What we will do here is also we will link this tutorial project folder, and we'll zip it up, we will upload it into our server, and we will link it in the description for you to download to have a look. And also perhaps you can just add more pages into our tutorial project and test it out. Okay, I think that's it. So see you in the next video. Bye.